There is an epidemic of losing poker players these days, and I know because I used to be one of them. Until one day I finally figured it out, I put the pieces of the puzzle together, and I learned how to consistently win at this game. I went from a broke, losing poker player struggling at this game to a winning poker pro, traveling the world, retired at a young age, and I figured this all out in around 1 year. So in this video, I'm going to give you the 10 key insights that I use to drastically change my results at the poker table and my life. Let's jump into it. All right, guys, so first things first, you need to know the hand rankings. It still blows my mind that some people don't understand the chart that is on your screen right now. Before I teach you any of the strategy in this video that you need to know at the poker table, you need to know what beats what. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. The best hand in poker is a royal flush, then a straight flush, all the way down to a high card. You need to memorize this chart, guys. Commit it to memory. You should never ever be guessing if a flush beats a straight at the poker table. Yes, it does. Let's move on to the next point. All right, so the next thing you need to know is to play the right hands. So this is the first thing that I always start with my students, is making sure that they memorize these charts as well, so they know exactly what hands to play in all situations. So I put the image here on your screen once again for a 6-player game. These are very popular online these days, and also a 9-player game, which are very common in the casino. So in a 6-player poker game, I would suggest playing the top 20% of your hands, and as you can see there, that is all hands in red on your screen. So that is all pocket pairs. That is nearly all Broadway cards, and a Broadway hand, by the way, is any 2 cards that are 10 and above. I have also included every single suited ace. So a suited ace would be something like an ace-4 of hearts, for example, and I've included a bunch of suited connectors as well. So why 20%? What is so magical about this number? Well, number one, this is just a suggestion. If you decide to play the top 25% of your hands, or even the top 30% of your hands, you can probably win with those numbers as well, but I wouldn't suggest playing more than that. Guys, the reason why I've given you a fairly tight starting hand selection here is that so you have a mathematical advantage entering the hands. If you decide to play a whole bunch of junky hands like a king-4 offsuit or a queen-8 like so many amateurs do, you're just fighting the math in poker, and that is why so many people lose. And by the way, I play an even tighter range in a 9-player game. I only play the top 15% of hands, and the reason why is because when there's 3 more players at the table, the chances that somebody has something good simply go up. So therefore, you need to raise your starting hand selection standards as well. Guys, bottom line, memorize some charts like this. Understand the best hands to play in poker. Stick to this strategy no matter what, and you're going to have a lot more success at the poker table. All right, now let's talk about position. This is the next most important thing that I find to this day. So many amateurs do not understand the chart that is on your screen right now. So guys, you need to understand that not all seats at the poker table were created equal, not even close. I have put a 6-player poker table on your screen here. You've got EP, which stands for early position, MP, which stands for middle position, the cutoff, and the button, which you're probably familiar with. The button is the one with the dealer chip in front of it. These are the 2 best seats, by the way, at the poker table, and I'll explain why in a second. And then you also have the small blind and the big blind. So the reason why the cutoff and the button are the most profitable seats at the poker table is because you get to act last on the flop, turn, and river, which is a massively proven statistical advantage because you get to see what they do first. This is a massive advantage in a game of incomplete information like poker. When they have to essentially give away information first, you are always going to be at a significant advantage because depending on what they decide to do, you can either make a bet, you can make a raise, or you can even fold your hand and save yourself money if you think you are beat. So guys, bottom line, I am not saying that you should not play hands from EP, MP, or the blinds. However, you should be significantly biased in your starting hand selection. You want to play the majority of your hands from the button and the cutoff. If it's one of those hands that is somewhat close, that perhaps was not included on the charts that I just talked about, I will play that hand on the button and the cutoff, and I will fold that hand from the other seats. Guys, once again, commit this to memory. You need to understand that the button and the cutoff are where you're going to make all of your profits from at the poker table, and you're going to have a lot more success. And by the way, as I always mention, you don't have to take my word for it. If you play online poker, you can simply put your hands in a poker tracking program and you can go see your results for yourself from each position at the poker table. I will put a link to the poker tracker software that I use as a professional in the description below. All right, guys, let's move on to the next point, which is to always raise pre-flop. So guys, you need to understand that the best way to win in poker is to take control of the pot before the flop. Weak players, amateur players, beginner players, on the other hand, routinely limp into the pot, which means that they just call the blind and they hope to hit a good flop. Guys, this is not a winning strategy in poker, because most of the time in poker, in fact 2 out of 3 times, you're not going to hit anything on the flop. And this is why so many amateurs and beginners lose money, is because they just limp into the pot and they hope and they pray they're going to hit the flop, and somebody like myself is going to raise them up, take the aggressive betting lead, and I'm simply going to stick a bet in your face on the flop because I know that you're going to fold 2 out of 3 times. It doesn't even matter what I have. I know you're going to fold. So guys, what is the solution here? The solution is to take control of the pot yourself when you enter and don't allow somebody else to take control. So I would recommend that anytime you play a hand of poker, you raise it to 3 times the big blind as a default strategy. So for example, you've got the ace of hearts and the king of clubs in a $1, $2 cash game. I would recommend raising it up to $6. Now, if you happen to be playing in a particularly wild, loose game where everyone's maybe having a couple drinks and they're calling a lot, try raising it a little bit more. $6 is just a rough recommendation. If I notice that everyone's calling me, I'll make it $10. I'll make it $20. I'll make it whatever is going to get me ideally 1 caller and get the rest of them to fold. All right, guys, so let's move on to punishing the limpers now. Now, I just alluded to this in the previous point. When I see some people limp into the pot, which once again is just calling the $2, for example, in a $1, $2 game, I am going to raise these people up literally 100% of the time. So for example, I've got the king of spades and the queen of diamonds, and I'm on the button, the best seat, of course, at the poker table. If I see 3 limpers, I'm going to be raising it up to a minimum of 7 times the blind. So once again, $1, $2 cash game, the big blind in that game is $2, so I would raise it up to $14 here. But once again, guys, same rule of thumb applies. If everyone's calling me, I'll try raising it up to 10 times the blind, 15 times the blind, whatever amount is going to get them to fold their hand and ideally get me just 1 caller. Guys, bottom line, do not allow people to limp, especially when you are on the button. Make them pay. Always take control of the pot, and you're going to have a lot more success at the poker table. All right, guys, let's move on to the flop now, and let's talk about making a flop continuation bet. So this has been one of my absolute bread and butter strategies during my entire professional poker career. This is also called a C-bet, and basically we're going to be continuing the aggression that we just talked about building before the flop. So let me give you an example. You've got the ace of hearts, king of spades, and you raise it up pre-flop, you get 1 caller, as we would prefer. Flop comes down with the 10, 5, 4 rainbow, rainbow meaning 3 different suits. They check. What should you be doing? Guys, you want to make a C-bet, aka continuation bet, of around 50% of the pot here. Now, you might have noticed something. We don't have anything at all on this flop, but once again, guys, that doesn't matter. We know that 2 out of 3 times they don't have anything, and therefore all we need to do here is bet around half of the pot, and we're going to make them go away the vast majority of the time. Also, since we're only betting half the pot here, we're giving ourselves a cheap price to make them go away. Guys, what I'm teaching you right here, right now, is literally the definition of how to win in poker. It starts by being aggressive before the flop, which we already just talked about, and now on the flop, even when you do not hit, you want to continue being aggressive and giving them a reason to fold. This is how I've made a career out of this game. Guys, you do not win at poker by playing passively, calling, and hoping to hit a big hand. Guys, that is how 95% of poker players play these days, and they wonder why they don't win. Professional poker players, people who win big in this game. They know better. They know that aggressive poker is winning poker. All right, let's move on to the next strategy lesson here. So next thing you need to know, guys, is you need to float on the flop sometimes. So let's talk about when you have nothing once again. So we've got ace queen in this example, the ace of hearts and queen of spades. And once again, the flop comes down with the 10-8 deuce rainbow, similar board to the last one. And once again, we don't have anything here. So we're going to assume that we actually called before the flop this time. So that's going to happen sometimes. And sometimes you're also going to be up against an aggressive player yourself. So what should you do in a spot like this? Well, I've been teaching you how to play aggressive poker throughout this video. And sometimes you're going to be up against an aggressive player, and what you need to understand is that you need to float the flop against these players in order to beat them. Now, what is floating? Floating is when you just call, especially in position, versus another player with the clear intention of taking the pot away later on. So the reason we're going to call here, especially versus a loose and aggressive players, is because we know that they have way too many bluffs and draws in their range in a spot like this. For example, they're going to have a bunch of hands that we're beating here, such as an ace jack, ace 9, king queen, king jack, queen jack, 9 7, 7 6. These are all draws or just two overcards. We are ahead of all of those hands, and from time to time they will have some sort of pair like a pocket 9s, pocket 8s, pocket 6s. There's some other hands like an 8-7, for example, but even versus all of these hands, we still have two strong overcards. So guys, in a spot like this versus a loose and aggressive player, you want to be making the call here on the flop even when you have nothing, because what we're going to do is try to bluff them out of the pot later on. By the way, if you want to learn how to bluff them out of the pot on the turn and river, I have multiple videos in my Elite Poker Training University, 17 plus hours of advanced training, 50 plus videos, hundreds of example hands, and downloadable cheat sheets. I have just opened up enrollment for a limited time. I will leave a link for you to enroll in the description below, but let's move on here to tip number 3, which is to always double barrel the weaker reg. So let's talk about those tighter players now, guys, and talk about how to bluff these players out of the pot. So guys, this strategy has been absolute money for me in today's games, especially against the weaker players who are looking for a reason to fold. So once again, we've got ace king here, and a weak tight regular calls us before the flop. Flop comes down with the 10-5-4, you bet they calls. So we already talked about this situation earlier on in the videos. This is a standard situation where we are going to be making a flop continuation bet, but they go ahead and make the call. So the turn comes down with the jack of diamonds. Guys, I am going to be double barreling here a large percentage of the time, and a double barrel, by the way, in poker means you raise before the flop, you bet the flop, and now you're going to bet the turn as well. Guys, this is an extremely strong play in poker, which basically draws a line in the sand and lets them know that you are absolutely serious about this pot, that they need to fold their hand right now, or it's going to cost them a lot of money. And believe me, I have bluffed a lot of weaker players out of the pot with this play. Now, there's two things you need to know here. Why are we betting on the jack? Well, the reason why, guys, is because the jack is an excellent scare card. Just imagine if this player is holding on with one of those smaller pocket pairs that we just talked about. For example, let's just assume they have pocket 8s in this hand. When we bet the flop, they're already concerned that we have perhaps a 10, maybe we have a hand like pocket kings, and now when the jack comes and they see us make a bet again, they're even more concerned. And what do we know that weak players love to do? Well, they love to find a reason to fold. So this is a perfect spot to make them go away, fold their pocket 8s right now, and go look for a better spot. The other thing is that this jack also gives us a gut shot to the Broadway straight. We can now catch any of the 4 remaining queens in the deck in order to make the unbeatable 10 jack queen king ace straight on the river. So this is an excellent spot to lay the hammer down. And finally, I want to be clear that I am betting 75% of the pot this time. So for example, the pot is $20. I'm going to bet $15 here, and the reason why is because I want to let them know that I am absolutely serious about this pot, and it's going to cost them a lot of money if they want to stick around with their pocket 8s. So guys, this is an unbelievably strong strategy against those weaker players. Try out this strategy next time you're in this situation. All right, guys, my number one way to start finally winning at poker, the number one thing that took me from broke losing poker player to winning poker pro in around 1 year, was when I finally learned to accept bad beats. aces. Guys, you need to understand that you are going to lose with the best hand in poker, and it's going to happen a lot. In fact, I put the image on your screen there. When you've got pocket aces on the flop of Jack 7 deuce, you are 76% to win, but if they have a hand like 8-9 of spades, they are going to win the pot still 24% of the time, guys, and that is not an insignificant amount. It's 1 out of every 4 times. And in this spot, they hit the 10 on the river to hit their inside straight draw, and I have seen consistently that this is the kind of thing that sets off a lot of beginners, amateurs, and a lot of my students in this game. It gets them frustrated, it puts them on tilt, and they end up throwing away a bunch of their money. So guys, the number one thing that I learned is to make peace with this, to accept that this is going to happen anytime I sit down to play poker. I basically made an agreement with myself that this is what I signed up for when I play poker. I am going to lose sometimes with the best hand. There is nothing on earth that I can do to change that. And when I finally learned to make peace with this fundamental aspect of the game of poker, this is when my profits in this game truly started to take off. All right, guys, like and subscribe if you found this video helpful. And if you want to know my entire strategy that I use to become a winning, successful poker player, make sure you grab a copy of my free poker cheat sheets. That will be the top link in the description below. You can download it and read it in an afternoon. Once again, it is totally free. All right, guys, all the best at the poker tables. Unless you're on mine, I will catch you next time.